Welcome, Berkeley Carroll families. We'll see if we have a few more students and parents joining us tonight, but I am recording. We're going to record the event so that other folks will be able to hear the wise words that we're all going to benefit from this evening. The college office is really excited to present tonight's speaker. When I asked Whitney Soule to speak with you tonight, she said, I want to do this for you and I want to do it in person. So kudos to the brave souls who made it out in the cool evening to be here with us this evening. Um, so she agreed to take the train to New York City this afternoon and is going to need to leave shortly after the program ends. But we are going to leave probably about 15 minutes for questions from the audience. And Whitney has said that depending upon, what she's sharing with you all and whether questions start coming earlier, she might take those a little bit earlier. But we're excited to have her till the end of the program. Whitney Soule is a devoted and inspiring admission colleague, someone that I met. I realized tonight that I really met when we traveled to China together, recruiting when I was working for Barnard College. But as I was coming up into that role at Barnard, I knew Whitney, and we had had a lot of exchanges. She's a colleague who's always warm and wise and kind. She's been through the college process with her two daughters, and I suspect that's going to be part of the conversation tonight, and with the thousands of students whose applications she's reviewed carefully and with intentionality. And she has a lot of wisdom to share. Whitney began her tenure as Vice Provost and Dean of Admission at the University of Pennsylvania in July 2021, bringing more than 3 decades in higher education admissions to the role. Previously, Soule had served as Senior Vice President, Dean of Admissions, and Student Aide at Bowdoin College. She serves on the Common App's Board of Directors, and juniors, you're going to hear a lot about the Common App in these next several months. She's also, what was I going to say? She is also chairs its finance committee, the College Board's Enrollment Leaders Group. She's part of the advisory core for its Admissions Research Consortium and a member of the advisory council of NACAC's Character Focus Initiative. And that's part of our national association that we all belong to as admission counselors. Soule received the NEACAC, which is the New England version of that ACAC Professional of the Year Award. And she was named Top Women Leaders for 2023 and top 25 women leaders in Pennsylvania. Wow. By Women We Admire, and was also included in the 2025 Philadelphia Business Journal's Women of Influence. She is frequently quoted in outlets like Bloomberg and Forbes and USA Today and Wall Street Journal. And she's had op-eds featured, you may follow her like I do, in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Dallas Morning News, and in Grown and Flown. So without further ado, my friend, Dean Soule.
Well, good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing? Who's hungry? All right. I know we're doing this at dinner time, and I have to just say I appreciate you all because your willingness to be here over the dinner hour means that I can sleep in my own bed tonight, which for someone in admissions is a really big deal. So I really appreciate your flexibility in timing. So thank you for the lovely introduction. And what I would love to do tonight is use as much of this time as we can to orient you to what is really happening in college admissions. What is it really like? Because this is not a new thing, but it's exponentially, I will say, out of control. That the amount of information that is available to all of you that you can access on your own from people who are telling you what it takes to do X that will matter when you do Y at this particular school, it's really hard to ignore it because it's often going right at the heart of what you might be nervous about or what you wish you knew more of. It's not unlike You see the doctor about something, they say, we might look into this more because of, and what do? Where do you go first? Google, Dr. Google. And what happens when you go there? You're all going to die. That's what's going to happen. You leave Google and you're sure you've got your death march lined up. You know everything that's going to happen, and it's not going to be good. When you go back to your doctor, you could have an entirely different set of news items to go over than the ones that took up your anxiety and your time and created a reality for you that is not the one that you're going to live out. That happens in college admissions all the time. And there are people whose authority when they speak translates as actual authority for you with good reason. It's intended to. But you get at the same level information from a student at a school. I use Penn as an example because we have students who are out there influencing, saying, here's the essay that got me into Penn. Here's what I wrote for my activities that got me into Penn. And you can replay that at any school, anywhere. You could translate it to the Ivy. You could translate that to small liberal arts. You could translate that to a state school. There's somebody out there telling you what the secret was. And I'm going to tell you, any kid or anybody really from outside of the admission office who tells you how somebody got in has absolutely no idea. When they say, this is what I wrote, this is the essay that got me in, what I'm thinking is, how do you know that you didn't get in spite of that essay? You have no idea where that essay factored in to what we were talking about. So the momentum of information, particularly the information that sometimes people will charge you for, because they will point to a track record of students being admitted into places that were their first choices. Again, what you don't have is where would that student have gotten in otherwise? Chances are the students that are getting pointed toward a particular school that a school ultimately admits have qualities that that school values beyond the construction of an application. So what I want to do tonight is talk a little bit about where we fit in as parents for this. And parents, I know you're sitting here with your children, and I think this is good for everybody to hear together. And having done this with my own children, and I did not do it perfectly, I'm going to tell you about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I hear come up over and over and over again, that when I give the answer, people find it really hard to believe because the external answer you hear more often, it's repetitive, it's compounded, and it feels more real than getting the truth from a particular school. We're going to go over that, and testing is going to be a good example of that. So we're going to spend some time there because I know everybody has questions about the role of testing in higher ed right now. But let's just talk first around getting situated and grounded going into the college process. I'm going to make this interactive. Try not to be bashful. If you're planning to apply to college, I want a student here to be brave enough to tell me why. Yes. Great. So you don't know, there's something that you are going to want to do after college. You don't necessarily know what that is. And what I'm getting from that answer is there's a belief that the experience of college is going to help you figure out what that is and help you get there. Is that fair? All right. That's that's the most important thing. And what I love in that answer is you don't necessarily know what that thing is. And there are students who know exactly what they want to do at this point. There's an outcome, there's a career, a profession that they have their eye on, and they're looking for a place that is going to get them ready to do that thing and give them assurance that they will be ready for that and can have that career. And often that can be a straight line. Sometimes in the midst of education and exposure to opportunity, that sight line can change to something else. And that's also one of the beautiful things about education. The thing that's really important is it is the student who is going to be having that experience. It is you young people sitting here today who are going to be a year older next year when you're putting these applications together and trying to represent yourselves. And then you're the ones who are going to step foot on a campus the following fall and live there or commute there. But there's going to be the educational experience, the coursework that you individually are going to take up. You're the one who's going to be making friends. You're the one who's going to be navigating a new place. You're the one who's going to be missing the people in your life who are not there. And so identifying the place where you might be able to connect. So those things that are going to be new and stretch you and challenging, you feel fortified enough to take them on and enough momentum to move through them. That's the basis of this college search. And the name of a school isn't going to tell you anything about that. A name of a school and reputation can give you a starting point of where you want to look because you've heard about it. You think you know things about it. You might know people who go there. And based on what you know about them and how they talk about their experience, that's a wonderful entry point to getting to know a place. There are thousands of schools. And the key is that when you step foot on that campus, that you are ready to be open to what that experience is, that you feel enough connected to the environment and the personality of that place that when you're pressured and you're stretched, you're connected enough to be able to find a way forward. And when I hear students say that they're applying to all the Ivy League schools, I'm thinking, we're really different. We're really different. Let's just take Dartmouth and Penn structurally as examples. Penn has 12 schools. 4 of those schools have undergraduate populations: nursing, Wharton School of Business, engineering, and the College of Arts and Science, which is a traditional liberal arts school. We have 10,000 undergraduates. We have 30,000 students overall. We're in the urban center of Philadelphia. It's a contiguous campus, so all of our students, the graduate students and the undergraduate students, are all together on that campus. The medical system is attached. By contrast, Dartmouth College is in northern New Hampshire. It's small. It has graduate programs. Its primary business is undergraduate. Its environment is different. The intimacy of the place is different given its size. And experiencing school in a space like that versus school in a space like ours, both Ivy League, were really different experiences in the day-to-day. Trying to package yourself as an applicant to match both of those things, in my opinion, means you're going to have to cancel some important things about yourself that would be unique to blend to 2 entirely different places when you're being reviewed and evaluated. One of the things that happens with that influence that I was describing is it is a regression to the mean. The more all of you are hearing similar voices and those get picked up by other voices that then tell you the same thing, so it gets reinforced over and over and over again. And the more you follow the advice of who you have to be, what you have to do, how you have to describe it, when you have to start, what you shouldn't do, then all of you start to sound the same, and you have built your lives around a structure that someone has decided for you instead of the opportunity to grow into who you are. And you're never going to be somebody else. So you can take your amazing singularness and uniqueness as an individual and try to package it into something else that you think will be valued. But the truth is, on our side, it's really hard to connect to that. It's really hard. You add AI into the mix, where getting polish on what you're writing, AI is working for all of you. It's trolling all the same information. You ask, what's a good essay for Penn on community, you're all going to get some similar answer back. And then when you send that to us, even if the seed idea was your own, they sound a whole lot alike. If you answer the question about community to Penn, just answering it, and you might use AI to say, how do I make it shorter, right? How do I check it for grammar? But you allow the content to have been generated exclusively by you, not by what somebody AI tells you Penn wants. The chances of us connecting to you are so much greater because you become the individual experience. It's your superpower in separating yourself in the applicant pool. The question we get all the time, how do I stand out? How do you stand out? Embrace who you are. And who you are, knowing who you are, you only have to know as much as you know at the time you're 17 and applying to college. You don't have to figure it out loud. I'm in my mid-50s. I definitely don't have it all figured out. I continue to become more of who I am over the course of my life, as will every person in here. So take who you are as a 17-year-old. Tell us about it in a way that feels like you and sounds like you. And it'll be the best way for an application reader to identify with you, to think about you, particularly relative to the things that are in our school that we're trying to fill with each seat. And you'll be memorable in that way. That's that if you hear nothing else from me tonight that you remember, that's the thing I want you to remember. And it's really important when we go to this concept of roles, because when you're applying in this, for the families in this room, there are 4 roles that get activated in a college application process. There's mine as the dean, and my responsibility, believe it or not, is not to all of you. My responsibility is to my university. There's a class of 2,400 students. 95 of them go to the nursing school, 384 go to the Wharton School, 343 go to the engineering school, and 1,424 go to the college. It's not 130 to nursing sometimes, and sometimes 90, it's 95. We have to top off at 2,400 because that's how much room we have for students to be living on campus, which is a required part of the Penn experience for our first and second year students. And in each of those 4 schools, those deans are bringing on new programs. They have an idea of the experience they want their students to have in the Wharton School and the engineering school and nursing and the College of Arts and Science. And so they communicate those to us, and we're reading for those. And then we're discussing students, we're discussing them around those components of each of the 4 schools. And that's my responsibility, to make sure that we fill those seats to the aspirations of the institution and the deans of those 4 schools every single year. If my responsibility were to reward talent, we'd be enrolling 60,000 people a year. My job is a discipline of limits in service to the university. It's also my job to make sure that we do that work with integrity and clarity and honesty, and to be as useful as possible in our office and describing to all of you what we value, how we look for it, how and why we evaluate it, so that when you're preparing, we're putting each of you in the best possible position to represent yourselves in your best way with the questions that we're asking you, because the questions are really intentional. That's my role as a dean and everybody working in my office along with me. There's the college counseling office, and you have a great one. I'm sure you already know that because you've already begun meetings and had a program in the fall to sort of get oriented into what you're going to be experiencing starting now going forward. Their careers are around understanding the higher education landscape as it is right now, in all of its complexity and all of its beautiful breadth. The list of institutions that are available to all of you is very, very broad and exciting. And their job is to help introduce you to places that might be a really good fit for you students, to move in to be able to take up the things that you care about as you learn more and more about what you care about and how you like to go about doing it. Those are unique roles, they're highly professional, and they're incredibly valuable to you. There are all of you students. You are absolutely the stars of this process. As I said earlier, you're the ones who are going to show up on campus and you have to live it out. You're the ones doing the work, making the friends, getting to work with the faculty, being afraid, overcoming, feeling victorious. That's all you. And only you can decide what places sound and feel like they would be a good fit for you. You can get a lot of input and advice, but at the end of the day, this is going to be your experience. And so it's really important that you have a lot of support in trying to figure it out. This is not going to change the rest of your life. There are opportunities here in college to add to the rest of your life. So if you don't get into the place that you thought was it, your life isn't all of a sudden going to be bad. And if you do get into the place that you think is perfect, your life isn't going to be perfect. This is part of a long life that you have and a really great experience coming up. And you have the support network to help you think through it as a 17-year-old to take on the next step. You're not taking on your whole life. You're taking on the next step. To your answer over here, to go to a place that's going to help me figure out what I want to do and then help me get that thing. Who hasn't been talked about yet? Yes, parents. I can say this as a parent because what happens a lot is parents forget that they're not the dean of admission or the college counselor or the applicant. And in love for our children, where we want them to get what they want, we want them to be happy. We don't want to see them hurt. We want to feel proud when they get what they want. It's really easy to try to manage everybody else's role. And there's a real danger in doing that. For one thing, unless you actually are a college counselor or dean of admission, you're not equipped to be in those roles. And whatever advice or direction you are offering and expecting a result from your kids is going to be a real challenge to the kids. Allow that expertise to come from those who have it. Because the only role that isn't taken up by those other roles is the landing place at home. And you, as the parents, know your kids really well. You know how they act under stress. You know how they act when they're excited. You see what they do when they're curious. You know the environments in which they procrastinate. You know their operating systems. And is there friction in that? For sure. But they're not going to become different people just because all of a sudden it's time to submit a college application. They're still going to be exactly who they are. And you have a view on that, loving them their whole lives. And if you can remember that nobody else can sit in the place where you are for your children, it's going to matter a lot. And I'll tell you how I know this because I messed it up with my own children. I have two daughters. They're adults now, 29 and 31, and they're out contributors into the world, and I'm very, very proud of them. But when my oldest daughter was getting ready to apply to college, she wanted me to have no part of it. I was like, really? Because, like, you know what I do, right? Um, I think I can offer you some like really good advice. People like leave dinner to come here and give advice, right? Um, and she like she wanted nothing from me. And I was super stressed. And we went on college tours, and I'm surprised she let me out of the car She was like, don't talk to anybody. I'm not gonna talk to anybody. Don't talk to anybody in the waiting room. Don't talk to people on tours. Don't talk. It's like, I'm not gonna talk. We went to visit colleges that I thought would be great for her. Because after all, I have this insight on her as a parent, and I have all this awareness in higher ed and selected schools that I thought would be great fits. And we went on a tour, and it just so happened that we had the tour guide to ourselves, that everybody did at this school, their own tour guide. And we're walking around, and I'm like, this is great. Like, I would like to go here. And I'm, given what I know about her and her interests, and the tour guide was sort of had asked her interests and was kind of customizing the tour to make sure that she got to see things that she might care about. And I'm like, man, I think this is going to be her first choice. Like, this is amazing. And when we left the school, I said, well, what'd you think? And she's like, sorry. And I'm like, be cool, just be cool, be cool, be cool. All right. What didn't you like about it? I don't know. Be cool, be cool, be cool. So we get to the next place. Repeat that experience. We have a great tour. She gets to see the things that matter to her. I'm like, now she's got two amazing choices. Like, this trip is going great. And we get back in the car. Well, what did you think? I don't know. Well, I thought the tour guide was great. I mean, when we went into the art center, and I mean, I just thought those facilities, yep. And so now I'm telling her the things that I think were like, did you notice? Like, did you notice this? And did you notice this? She did. And I said, I'm having a hard time following. Like, I mean, just for your own good, it would help me to know what you care about or don't care about, because that's going to help figure out maybe where we should look. And she's like, it had too many roads. Roads, ROADS. Now, mind you, the school that we just left that got this comment is a very small school in a small town. Not smallest town, but I mean, it has roads, and it has roads that go through the campus like most campuses do, right? The vehicles can get through a campus, and it had streetlights around the campus. I mean, there was traffic there, but I mean, it's like how life goes on kind of traffic. And so I mean, I had nothing to say at that point, and we didn't talk about that anymore. And we drove to the next place. We got there at night, and she had an interview and tour first thing in the morning. And so I wanted to go and drive to figure out where is the admission office so we know where we're going to be going first thing in the morning and not stressing out about that. That was my own anxiety. So we are approaching this campus, and all I see are streetlights through the campus. It's like illuminated, the whole thing. And in my head, I'm like, well, I guess we should just turn around. I mean, look at all the lights. I don't say a word about the lights. Neither does she. We go drive through the road lit campus, find the admission office. Now we know we're going to be the next morning. We go back to the hotel, get up the next morning. We arrive. I say nothing to anybody. Mind you, I'm sitting in the admission office hearing all of the wrong information that parents are telling each other about how it all works. And I'm like, don't do it. Just don't say a thing. And I didn't. I sat there being a mom. She goes off on her tour. I was not invited. And I said, that's great. I will wait for you in the student center. And, you know, come find me when you're done. She comes, and I said, well, how'd that go? And she's like, I love it. I went at a loss. Like, I don't know what happened to the road thing. This place was all roads. It's a bigger school. There's a lot going on around it. And and ultimately she applied early decision, and that's where she went, and she loved it. She's a devoted alumna and living a great life, doing work that she cares very much about. What I learned in that was that this was always a child who separated to process. This was the child who went to her room, put her headphones in, would be stressed about something when she came home from school and separate herself. And when she was ready to let me know what was on her mind or she wanted to talk about it, she would bring it up. And somehow I allowed myself to blow past that completely because we're on a trip. We need to understand what we care about and we care about in each place before we go on to the next one so that we're like getting a good log of experience here that we could work from because time's running out because we're doing this right now, but it's not going to be too long before you have to select where you're going to apply. And I had applied all of this to a kid who needed space to take the tour and start talking to me about it if and when she was ready to describe what she thought about the school. Prompting her about what she thought did not help her, and it separated her further from me because it was pressure. What I should have been was her landing place in the way I knew how to be in so many other spaces of her life. And I had turned my attention into a should place for her instead of a comforting place for her by getting completely wrapped up in this. So I had tripped over into college counseling space there because I thought I knew what would be best for her, what kind of school would be best for her, the order in which we should look at them, and how she should have felt about it after experiencing those places. And I ran her right over. It was when she didn't have me with her that she experienced a school. I mean, I was there, but I wasn't with her in that whole experience. I also think that was a really good school for her. But I believe that there was something about letting her have that space to explore that school without me following her, or by more likely her following me, honestly, tour. And it was a really good, it was a really good lesson. And I'm sharing that with you because you would think that I would know, given all the work that I had done before my kids were doing this, that I could have done better in that moment. And it's really, really hard. It's really hard. Fortunately, when my second daughter was getting ready to apply to college, um, she is a more expressive, naturally more expressive about her feelings. So I had more insight, but I carried as much anxiety, even with the insight, as I did with my first child, because I was the parent and I wanted them to be secure and I wanted them to be happy and I wanted it to be as friction free as possible. And it's not going to be. And as parents, we can easily add more friction when instead we should be the one place where a student can be and just be who they are and get supported through a process that naturally includes a lot of judgment and scrutiny, and to not have that be in the parent space. So, and I will also say that my older daughter, who didn't really want me involved, didn't want me involved in her application either, which also stressed me out significantly. But what she did do was let other people, other adults help her. And so I did grow up enough at that moment to realize she's looking for help. She's set a boundary. I'm going to let her have that. And, you know, if she needs to redirect at some point, then maybe we'll have that conversation then. So that's my rules story. It's also my roads story, and I put them together. All right, that's all I'm going to say about here's what everybody ought to be doing. I am going to talk about testing because I know that that is, am I right? That's on everybody's minds, what to do about testing. All right, tell me something you've heard about testing and its role in college admissions right now. Somebody must have heard or read something, even though I told you not to listen to all that. I know you have. Parents can answer this too. And I know you talk among yourselves and your friends, so I know you've all heard something about testing.
It's coming back into vogue more.
Back into vogue. Okay. Yep. Anything else? Yes.
The average test does not, like the average doesn't mean average, and if you don't have 200 or above.
Right. Depending on your test score, you should or should not do something. Yeah, but there's a lot of that out there. Anything else? Do you hear anything about test optionality? What do you hear about that? Is it safe? Anywhere that's competitive requires testing. Okay. This is going to be a great conversation. So just for you to know my own background, I had 30 plus years of work in higher ed admissions before coming to Penn. And all of those years just happened to be in test optional schools. I started my career at Bates College, which is a small liberal arts college in Lewiston, Maine. And it was the second test optional school in the country. And it went test optional in the right around early 80s, 1980, something like that. When I was at Connecticut College, which is where I worked afterward, Connecticut College became test optional, not because of me, just did while I was there. And then I went to work for Bowdoin College, and Bowdoin College was the first school in the country to be test optional and made that decision in 1969. By the time I was the dean at Bowdoin, more and more schools had taken up test optional policies, and some of them in universities, sort of beyond the small liberal arts space, but typically in admission practices that are considered holistic, which you've probably had some introduction to that language earlier in the fall as you were getting ready to think about college admission. But basically, holistic or comprehensive review means it's not algorithmic. There are quantitative components that we're looking at, but those are situated in all of these other components around you as a student and how you spend your time and what you care about and how you organize yourself around things that matter to you. And so schools that were going to become test optional were doing it for a particular reason, for their enrollment, usually for something that mattered to them ideologically. And they had the time to think about what that would mean. What does it, to do that analysis, what's the place it holds in our applicant review right now? And what do we think would happen if it weren't here? And if we take it away, do we need something else in its place to be able to evaluate students in a way that's meaningful for us to bring a class into this school? When COVID happened, most schools had to go test optional for reasons I don't need to explain. And so what you're seeing now is schools that didn't have time to prepare, who became test optional in an emergency, which was bringing emergency to many other components of the institutions, and maybe emergency to other components, even in admissions. So the absence of testing you couldn't look at as an isolated removal of a variable. It was mixed in with all these other things. And so schools have been taking time, or I hope schools have been using time since, to be evaluating what does this mean for us now? And you're seeing schools make different decisions. Some schools believe that having tests be optional or tests not included at all, if it's a test-free environment, means that they're satisfied with the admission evaluation processes that they have is suitable to what they need to understand to bring students into their school who are going to be successful at the starting point. They're well equipped to take on what that school is going to ask of them and believe that they can take on the work from there. Some schools are bringing testing back because they feel that some aspect of standardization is going to help them in the way that they do their review. And it may not be traditionally SAT, ACT, it could be either of those or instead of, or a combination with other sorts of exams that are out there, a combination of AP exams, IB results for schools that have the IB curriculum and so forth. And then some schools are taking testing back, and by testing, I mean traditional results from SAT or ACT. Ultimately, the responsibility of a dean and an admission office is to understand the role of the materials you're asking students to complete and submit. Why are you asking for it? Does what's submitted actually do the work for you in the evaluation that you need it to? And does it do it well enough for everybody for it to be a fair thing to require? Even though fair is not actually an active word in any of this, because nothing about any of this fits a definition of fair. So you're seeing schools make different choices based on what they value, how they need to evaluate it, and what they need to secure for their own schools. And so it's really confusing out there now, because prior to this environment, test optionality pretty much meant a school said, we can do this work without your tests. We're choosing to give you the option, and we don't need to know what your tests are. And believe us when we tell you that if you're not submitting testing, you're not going to be a disadvantage. One of the things I used to say at Bowdoin all the time was, and the prior schools too, but especially as the dean where I got interviewed a lot, imagine being a reader where we're in a test optional environment and you get to a file that doesn't have testing and you're like, I wonder what this testing is. Because you all think that if readers can't see testing, they're going to think the testing is really bad. So then you're like, I should probably submit my testing so they can see it's not as bad as they would think it is if they weren't looking at it. And now you get into a spin, right? But in reality, we're not stopping to imagine test scores that aren't there, because we could ask you to send them if we needed them. If they're not present and we say we can work without them, then readers are going to move through without hitting a speed bump on absence. Are we doing okay on time? Okay. So when a school tells you they're optional, and here's what it means to us, you should believe the school. If a school says we're optional, but if you have them, we want to see them, you should believe them. If they say you can submit this combination, you should believe them and pick the combination that you think best represents what you want to do. Not that you heard that, well, you could do the APs, but it's probably better to do the SAT because I heard. No, if the school is telling you this, the school is the authority on what their process is and what they're asking from you, because they know how it's going to interact with everything else that they're asking from you, and you should believe them. Schools that require testing will be telling you what they want, how they want it, and I hope explaining the role that it has in the process. One of the challenges that I find as a dean is that testing has an outsized place in the conversation compared to the place that it holds in the process. And so the more I'm asked to put testing information on our website, because people want transparency, the more real estate testing gets on our website compared to how much time we spend looking at it, talking about it, or integrating it into the overall academic review. And yet I have to be responsive to the anxiety that's out there. So in our testing requirement, it's straightforward. You have to send the ACT or the SAT. And if you do not have a result, not you don't want to send a result, but if you don't have one, and there are lots of good reasons why students don't have test results and aren't going to have them, you automatically get a testing waiver. Because we know that we can read without it, because it is not a significant part of the application. It's valuable to have it if we can, but it is, believe it or not, it is not included in our academic evaluation. It wasn't before COVID. It wasn't when we were test optional, and it's not now.